Great. So I am here with Professor Robert Aumann, uh, Professor Israel Aumann, who is, he's he focuses on game theory. He received the Nobel in 2005 for his work on game theory, and he lives here in Israel and has interesting political views. And so, in keeping with that, I want to thank Professor Alwyn for the opportunity to speak with him today. Uh, Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Okay.
I wanted to give a brief introduction. Maybe not all of our viewers are familiar with you. I want to give a brief introduction. You were born in Germany in 1930 and grew up in the States, and eventually came to Israel. And you teach at Hebrew University right now.
Yeah, that's correct. I've been in Israel for almost 70 years. Okay. Okay, since 1956. Okay, so we're approaching the 70th anniversary. Okay.
Wow. Right. Okay. So that's great because I have questions that I think that perspective would be very, very, very helpful in answering. So I read that you guys had kind of a more traditional view of the state of Israel originally, and then as you grew into adulthood, that changed. Obviously, came here in 1956. Is that true? How did that happen?
Well, in Germany, we were part of a Haredi community, okay? And the German Haredim are not like the Israeli Haredim, yes. They for example, they look like ordinary people, yes. They don't walk around with it's not easily recognizable that they are Haredim. They don't have long payas, but more important, they lead ordinary lives. Yes, they go to school, they go to work, they have businesses, they have. And many Haredim also, many Israeli Haredim also lead that kind of life, but many don't. Yes, many don't. But Haredim in observance, yes, that's what the German Haredim. We belong to a Haredi community, and we frowned our community. I mean, I was a little child when I left Germany. I was 8 years old, so I didn't frown on anything. But my family and my community frowned on the whole Zionist enterprise. Okay, because the Zionist enterprise was led by people who were not Shomer Mitzvot. Okay, they were not. They were not dati, not religious, yes, and they were Zionists, but Ben Gurion and Golda and Sharet and Weizmann and all those people, they were not dati. And many of the kibbutzim were also not Datiim, and they were the leading force in Israel. And so it was not our. We were opposed to the Zionist movement. But then after the war, We spent the war years in the United States, World War II. After the war, we made an about face because the my whole family. Yes, I was by that time. I was when the war ended in 1945. I was 15 years old, so I was able to think a little bit by myself also, and. Uh, the struggle against the British. It was mainly against the British, not so much against the Arabs, but against the British in Palestine. Uh, was caught our imagination, and we made a 180-degree turnaround. Okay, we became ardent Zionists. Okay, and my brother and I and my parents determined eventually to move to Israel. Uh, Now, my brother made Aliyah in 1950, uh, and my father uh, uh, did not make it. He died in the United States in 1954, and in 1955, I was married to an Israeli girl in Brooklyn. And in 1956, we made Aliyah. And in 1957, my mother made Aliyah. So, we made a turnaround, okay? And I've been a Zionist ever since. My brother was also my mother also, yes. Uh, so, uh, so that's it. By the way, I mentioned the word Palestine, okay, and I did it on purpose because um, Palestine was the word Palestine in Hebrew is Eretz Yisrael, okay. The word Palestine on the coins of the mandate, yes, was written on one side was written Palestine, and in Arabic also Palestine, and on the other side of the same coin, yeah, we're talking about a coin, okay. A 10 grosh coin, by the way, 10 grosh at that time, at the time of the mandate, was worth more than maybe 500 shekel nowadays. Yes, okay. But I don't know, I didn't, but something like that is correct. Now, and on the other side was written Eretz Yisrael. So Palestine is Eretz Yisrael. And when we talk about Palestinians as referring to only to Arabs, okay, when we say the word Palestinian nowadays, yes, in 2024 Israel, we mean an Arab, but no, that's not correct. I am not a Palestinian myself, but my wife is a Palestinian. She happens to be Jewish. I'm not married to an Arab, but she is a Jewish Palestinian. She has Palestinian identity papers. She still has them. Okay, she still has a Palestinian identity papers, and I don't know why we agreed. Yes, I mean that they probably our in the Oslo Agreement. The word Palestine is used to refer only to Arabs, and that's a mistake. You know, they didn't ask me. They didn't do game theory. It's a mistake because it implies what many people say, that we are colonialists. Okay, so the Palestinians are the natives. The Arab Palestinians are the natives, and we came from Europe and North Africa and so on, and colonized, colonized Palestine. All right, it's a mistake. You know, the Palestine is Jews and Arabs. Okay.
So I have a question. I have a question about something you sort of maybe alluded to, you came here in the 50s and you were ideologically an ardent Zionist. And the leftists at the time were also, by and large, ardent Zionists, except for maybe the most fringe leftists. Um, the leftist mainstream in Israel at the time, if you were to map them politically today, they would be far to the right of, I think, even Ben-Gvir. Um, and then it changed because to be on the left eventually meant sympathizing with the Arabs and uh, constantly being involved in these discussions of land for peace and we need peace and we need a peace agreement. All this stuff, it didn't quite used to map that way. I'm sure in academia, these changes also were reflected. Has your ideology changed since the 1950s in any major respect?
Well, let me say something. Let me respond to that. You know, if left wing means peace, then I'm left wing. Okay, I'm also for peace. Let me say this: I am. I came here in the middle of the Suez campaign. Okay, I came here in 1956 in the middle of the Suez campaign. We got off the plane, all right, and we were taken by taxi to Jerusalem from, it was not yet called Ben Gurion Airport, but it's the airport that is now Ben Gurion Airport. And we drove in the middle of the night on a moonless night. We drove from the airport to Jerusalem with no lights. Okay, no lights. Okay. Now, I think maybe it was more dangerous to drive without lights, but at that time there wasn't very much traffic. Okay, the reason we drove with no lights is because we were concerned about an Egyptian air attack and an air raid from the Egyptians. It was in the middle of the Suez campaign, so I came here in the middle of a war. And I'm still here in the middle of a war. Okay. 70 years later, almost 70 years later. And I have to say, it's a little tiring. Okay. It's a little tiring. It's not only tiring, it's worse than that. My oldest son was killed in one of these wars in 1982. He was killed in Lebanon. And now my grandchildren are fighting in Gaza. It's not fun. So if wanting peace is left wing, I'm left wing. Okay, so let me put it that way.
I meant only.
The question is how to achieve peace. Yes,
right.
But peace is definitely, I'm in favor of it. And you can write that down, B'otiyot Kiddush Levana.
You know, the peace discourse in Israel centers around how many concessions Israel must make to its enemies before they declare peace or a ceasefire or temporary peace or whatever it is. So in that sense, that doesn't seem like that was the discourse of the mainstream Zionists in the 1950s, and it's changed drastically. That's
no, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think we have been for peace. Zionists have been for peace not only in the 50s, on the 2000s, but we have been striving for peace for 100 years, more than 100 years. Okay, more than 100 years. Every commission, every committee that suggested some kind of accommodation okay, from 1920, more than 100 years. Always our side has agreed. Yes, it's the other side that disagreed. Okay, so in other words, for example, in the there was a Peel Commission in the 1930s. I don't even remember what it wanted, but we agreed. They didn't agree, and there was the declaration of the UN declaration on November 29th, 1947. Okay, now that was a partition of Palestine. All right, and in that partition of Palestine, the Jews got a little strip of land um, around Tel Aviv. Yes, from Haifa to Tel Aviv, I think something like that. A narrow strip of land, and we got the Negev, which was it was full of nothing. Yes. And we got the Eastern Galilee, okay, and all the rest was given to the Arabs, and Jerusalem was supposed to be split and international, not part of the Jewish state. Okay, internationally governed, but the Jews were not going to be expelled from Jerusalem. That's true. Okay, now we accepted that. Okay, that was the decision on November 29th, 1947. And we accepted that. It's the Arabs who didn't accept it. Okay, it's the Arabs who didn't accept it, and they attacked us, and we fought back. Okay, so they attacked us again in 1967. No, to be entirely accurate, in 1967, they didn't. They simply massed a lot of troops on our borders. Yes, and they started shelling us. The Jordanians started shelling us in Jerusalem. I was in Jerusalem at the time, and the shells were falling. And we said, you know what? We said to the king of Jordan, you know what? You can shell us another 24 hours, okay? But after that, we're going to respond. So they kept shelling us, but they didn't stop after 24 hours. And the result was that we moved in. We moved into what is now called the Judea and Samaria, and also Gaza, yes, and we captured all of Sinai, and this is so this was it's always they who refuse to accept it. They attack it, and of course it happened again on October 7th. Okay, so it's always them. Yes, it's always them. The question is not. I mean, you seem to be against peace. I'm in favor.
I'm in favor of peace. The question is the price.
I want peace. The question is how to achieve peace. Okay, that's the question. How to achieve it. Now here is where game theory makes its appearance. Okay. Now the question is whether making concessions, making concessions is the road to peace. And the answer of game theory is, and not only game theory, but also history. The answer of history and of game theory is no, concessions do not lead to peace. Concessions lead to war. Okay? Concessions lead to war. Not to peace. So that is, and I'll explain that right away. Now, but let me first give you a little history. Okay. Now, what nation in the world uh, do you think is most associated with peace? What
Uh,
nation?
the heavily armed Swiss, of course.
The Swiss. Okay, wonderful, wonderful, good. Switzerland. All right. Switzerland has been at peace for 400 years. Okay. Now, let me tell you this story. I have, thank God, I have 21 beautiful grandchildren. Okay. And
Baruch
with each one of them, I go out when they become 15 or 16. In other words, a little mature. I go out with them to Putzlaritz, and I do a trip to Putzlaritz with him, usually in nature, something like that. Uh, Hiking, climbing, skiing, whatever. Yes, maybe on a boat or whatever. Okay. So I go out with them. So I have this grandson, and this is now he's an officer in the army. But at the time he was 15, I say a high school student. I went with him to Switzerland. Okay, the land of peace, right? And we were hiking in the mountains, and there's a jet plane screaming overhead. And my grandson asks me, Grandpa, Saba, what's that plane? Okay. So I say to him, that is a fighter plane of the Swiss Air Force. Okay. So he says to me, a fighter plane of the Swiss Air Force. So I say, yeah, right, a fighter plane of the Swiss Air Force. Okay. And he says to me, Grandpa, why do the Swiss need fighter planes? They've been at peace for 400 years. They're wasting their money, okay, on fighter planes. So I say to him, you know what? You know why they've been at peace for 400 years? It's because of that fighter plane. They've been at peace for 400 years. And they have been at peace for 400 years because they have caves all over the mountains with filled with munitions. Now, to this day, yes. And they maintain their citizens have to go for 2 weeks every year to Miluim. Yeah. Now we are in Miluim. We send our children and grandchildren to Aza and to the north for Miluim to fight, and they actually fight. But the Swiss don't have to fight because they have been sending their kids to Miluim 2 weeks every year for 400 years. Okay, so they don't have to fight. All right, that is the thing. In other words, what game theory is all about. Let me give you another example. The Switzerland is a modern epitome of a peaceful country, right? Now, but the ancient epitome of the peaceful country, for a while anyway, was Rome, and there was a period of 200 years or 230 years uh, toward the beginning of the first millennium that's called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Have you heard of it?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. Now you know what the what's the word, the proverb, not the proverb, but the saying of the Roman peace, what the Romans said as the motto of the Roman peace. The motto of the Roman peace was "Si vis pacem para bellum." I said it in Latin. "Si vis pacem para bellum." If you want peace, prepare for war. Okay, that's when you get peace. Okay, so that's what we don't. Peace does not come from um, concessions. Okay, it doesn't come from concessions. On the contrary, concessions bring war because I'll give you an example which is right up to date. Okay, we moved out of Gaza in '05. Remember? Or you were too young to remember that. We expelled the Jews from Gaza. Now, Jews have been expelled from countries all over the world for thousands of years. Okay, there was the most famous expulsion is maybe from Spain, but there were also expulsions from England and from other places. Jews were expelled, but there was the most recent expulsion of Jews is the expulsion of the Jews from the Gaza Strip in 2005. Okay. And who did that? Not the English, not the Spanish, not the Germans. The Germans never expelled Jews, by the way. What they did was kill them. But these other countries expelled the Jews. So now Israel has joined the list of countries that expelled Jews. Okay, and we expelled the Jews from the Gaza Strip, and that led to a series of wars. There's a temptation to call them minor wars, but if you get killed in a minor war, it's just like when you get killed in a major war. Okay? And there was a series of wars on the Gaza Strip immediately following the expulsion of the Jews. Okay? So that led to war. And now it has led to the greatest war, to the most tragic war that Israel has experienced in the war that we're now in. Okay, now why is that? Okay? That's history. Now, what does game theory have to do with that? All right. Now, game theory is all about incentives. Okay, you want to give people incentives to do what you want them to do. Okay, so you're in a situation with a. Let me give you a very simple example. I have a relationship with a grocery store on my corner. Okay, what's the relationship? The relationship is that I come to the grocery, once a week or twice a week, and I buy challahs, and I buy milk, and I buy cheese, and I buy this or that. And he always gives me a good. He always gives me commodities, merchandise. That's good, and therefore I keep coming back to him. Now, if he would give me something spoiled, then I would not come back to him. So if a peddler comes to my door and offers me milk, I'm not going to buy it because he's not coming back to me, right? He's not. A peddler comes once in a lifetime. So he does not have an incentive to give me a good merchandise. But the grocer on the corner has an incentive to give me good merchandise. And if by chance he does give me something spoiled and I bring it back to him, he'll give me. He says he's sure. He'll say, Mr. Aumann, fine, okay, here's your money back. Because he wants me to come back, he has an incentive to make a good day. Now, nowadays one uses credit cards, but there was a time not too long ago when people had accounts at their corner grocery, okay? And you would come into your corner grocery and you would buy some merchandise, and then instead of paying, you would say, Moshe, please write it down for me, okay? And at the end of the month, you would pay. And he trusted you. Why did he trust you? Because he knew that if you don't pay at the end of the month, he's not going to give you credit anymore. All right. So it's a two-way operation. All right. That's incentives. And people, we do everything we do because of incentives. Everything. Okay. Everything. Why do we eat? Why do we eat? We need food in order to grow, in order to get energy. We need food, but that's not why we eat. Okay, we eat because we have an incentive to eat, because we get hungry. The hunger gives us an incentive to eat. Okay, and and what is pain used for? Why did Mr. Darwin invent pain? Okay, why should it hurt people when when something is wrong with them? It's bad enough that something is wrong with them. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu or Darwin or evolution or whatever it is invent pain? Pain gives us an incentive to go to the doctor. Okay? Pain gives us an incentive. When there's something wrong with us, pain gives us an incentive. The pain doesn't heal us. Okay? The food doesn't. We don't eat because because we need energy. We eat because we're hungry, and pain does not heal us. But pain gives us an incentive to go to the doctor, okay? And I won't talk about reproduction, but there's also some incentives involved in reproduction, and the listener can imagine what they are, okay? So game theory is all about incentives. Yes, we work for a living because we get paid. Executives get bonuses to give them an incentive for the stock to go up. Incentives are all over the world. Okay,
so
incentives are all over the world, and making concessions in a war or in a situation like we have with the Arabs, making concessions is exactly the wrong thing to do. It's okay. It's exactly the wrong thing to do. Let me give you another example of incentives. Okay, I'll give you another example, and that's the business of the kidnapped. The people were kidnapped on October 7th on Simchat Torah and taken for prisoners. Now, we are doing exactly the wrong thing. Okay? The exact opposite of what we are doing, we should be doing. Now, what are we doing? We're making a big fuss in Israel about the kidnapped people. We're making a big fuss about them. So we are sending a signal to our enemies, to Hamas, yes, that the captives are the kidnapped are very important for us, which they are, yes, okay. But we are sending a signal to them, yes, that they are very important. And that raises the price. It raises the price of the Hamas demands so far that we are unable to accept it. Essentially, they want us to release thousands of terrorist prisoners, and also to stop the war, so to say, okay, you win the war, okay, and then they will return some of the captives, maybe all of the captives, or maybe some of them. Okay, then they will return. But that is impossible for us, okay? It's impossible for us, first of all, because it'll cost more lives. Yes, even the terrorists released are going to go and do more damage and kill more Israelis and then has happened in the past. Just like we also paid 1,000 with 1,000 terrorists, released 1,000 terrorists for Gilad Shalit, and look what happened. Okay, one of the terrorists was in was uh, and he said, look what has happened because of that Gilad Shalit. But we don't learn. We make this we make it, in fact, we have made it impossible to reach a deal concerning the terrorists because of the fuss. We're giving exactly the wrong incentives. Okay, how can I help you further?
Sure. Well, I had a question which you kind of touched on. In terms of game theory, Israel's defense policy from Jabotinsky's Iron Wall until right before October 7th was basically conceptually something like this. The Arabs are not going to resign themselves to us having a state here, us being the majority of their own free will. And therefore, we must build an army which is like an iron wall, which they will not be able to breach. And from defeat after defeat after defeat, they will eventually decide it's a pointless enterprise to breach it. It's a pointless enterprise to attack Israel because it's too strong. And so therefore we must come to some kind of accommodation, focus on our economic well-being, whatever have you. And this was Jabotinsky's thesis in the Iron Wall. It was also basically the conceptia, the general idea of the Israeli security establishment before October 7th, that Hamas is deterred. It's, the price for attacking us is too high. They understand this, and they wish to focus on things like, high-speed internet availability in Khan Yunis and budgetary, balancing the budget and a positive trade balance and what have you. So Jabotinsky wrote the Iron Wall in 1926. The attack was almost 100 years later, 97 years later. What is the game theoretical perspective on this? Was it a basically sound idea that was just implemented poorly? Was it flawed from the beginning?
I have to confess my ignorance. I'm a Zionist, but and I'm generally considered right wing, but I have to hand it to you. I did not read Jabotinsky. Okay, I've been occupying myself with nonsense for 90 years. Over 85 years, and I have not yet gotten around to reading Jabotinsky. So I don't want to relate. I don't want to relate to Jabotinsky because I simply don't know. Okay. But what I will do is say this. I mean, we were talking about incentives before, so let me get back to that. I think we are in big trouble because the Arabs are being the Arabs. By the way, the Arab man in the street does not necessarily hate us. Okay, I don't know. There are Poles, but Poles are suspect. I think many Arabs. I won't say most. Okay, I think many Arabs are willing to live at peace with us. but the trouble is that uh, they have the wrong incentives, and they're given the wrong incentives. Partly it's our fault. Okay, now there was a clause in the Oslo Agreement, which is now it's almost 30 years ago, right? Something like that. Yeah, it's more than 30 years ago. There was a clause in, or there is a clause in the Oslo Agreement saying that both sides will educate their children for peace, for accepting the other side, even for cooperating with the other side, living with the other side, loving the other side. Okay, uh, and and this is a clause in the Oslo Agreement. In my opinion, it's the most important clause. Okay, but in fact, it is the clause that has been universally disregarded. The Arabs have in their schools, they are constantly educating uh, for hatred of the Jews, for hatred of Israel, for revolution, for them. Now it's not necessary. Yes, we did not insist on that. That clause became a dead letter as soon as it was written. We did not insist on that. We want to change. I was saying that incentives are the basis of what you do. Yeah, you do things because you have incentives to do them. Now, but incentives are in the long run. They are based on um, they're based on what you want. Okay, so if what you want is to destroy the Jews, okay, then it's going to be very difficult to make peace. But I think if somehow we could manage to educate the other side to to accept us, all right, I won't say love us, but to accept us, just like we accept them, then I think we'd be better off. That is the solution. The iron wall, by the way, is a the way you describe it. I did not read Jabotinsky, so in other words, taking your description of the iron wall, it's more or less it's more or less the what I said about Switzerland, what I said about Rome. Okay, si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Prepare for war with an iron wall, okay, with an iron wall. Prepare for war with a Swiss fighter plane, okay, fine. It's very close actually, but there's also see if you want peace, prepare for war has another side for it. You want people to not only to accept peace because they can't capture the other side, which is what the Iron Wall is saying, but to want peace because it's better for both sides to have peace.
Okay. You mentioned reproduction as driven by incentives earlier, and you just alluded to kind of the idea that incentives themselves are driven by something higher potentially. People value something and that drives their incentives. They have some sort of belief perhaps, or they don't. That drives their incentives.
No,
no?
No.
Moral principles don't drive incentives.
Incentives are an incentive to eat a good piece of fish like my wife makes, yes, is that it's good, it's tasty. You don't value it because it's something, some kind of deep valuing or something like that. You just like it, okay?
No,
You
but in a
like it.
week,
So the incentive to eat the fish is that it's tasty.
but in a week from now, even if somebody were to bring you a fish, you would say, no, I'm fasting. It's Tisha B'Av today. And so you have something that overrides your most base set of incentives, which is a higher set, right? Driven by a worldview, driven by ideals, driven by values. Perhaps not everybody.
Okay,
And
that's
we can
something higher. That's not an incentive. Okay,
right.
it's not an incentive. An incentive is just to give you a carrot and a stick. Okay, a
Sure.
carrot and a stick. A carrot is because you like the carrot, and the stick is you want to avoid the stick. Okay,
Sure.
that's what the incentives are. Something very very basic, very mundane. Okay, very not ideological, not looking for deeper values or higher values or something like that. That's what incentives are about. Also, I think higher values is a good thing, but I would like to get the Arabs and the Jews lower values, okay? But just to live at peace with each other because it's better for both of us.
Okay. Um, we see something happening today, which is unprecedented, which is everywhere in the developed world except for Israel, fertility is plummeting below replacement. And
Excuse me,
I said
I didn't catch.
I said we're seeing something today which is unprecedented in the
Yes.
developed world. That everywhere except for Israel, fertility is plummeting below replacement. In other words, people are having one child per family, perhaps less in some cases, and this rate is accelerating, except for Israel. And within Israel, you see
Well,
also differential fertility. You see the Haredim have 6 children per family. You see the more secular people are, the lower their birth rate is. And I have a question of what this looks like from the game theoretical perspective, because people tend to have children sort of based on what's common in their social group, in their social circle. And we're seeing that perhaps this has something to do with the plummeting birth rates, but also how this plays out politically inside Israel.
I don't know. I don't know. It's very strange. Yes, it's something I haven't done the math yet, but there's something very strange, and that is that when I came to Israel in 1956, okay, 70 years ago, the Haredim had about 10 or 11 or 12 members in the Knesset, okay? And that's what they still have. With the birth rate that you're talking about, they still have at least the representation in the Knesset has not changed dramatically. I don't know why. I don't know why, because they have a tremendous birth rate, like you said, and the that's something is went wrong with the math there. I don't know. And it should be that over 70 years they should have been much. Their representation in the Knesset, because the birth rate as compared to the birth rate of other people. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but with I don't know what's going to happen altogether. You know, yesterday you went to shul yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the most important psukim in yesterday's Torah reading was האחיכם יבואו למלחמה ואתם תשבו כאן. Okay? Will you remember that? Yeah, were you listening?
Of course. Yeah. When the two tribes don't want to cross the Jordan.
Will your brethren go to war and you'll sit here? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a problem. I think if we're going to have a tremendous increase in Haredi population, I don't see it coming because like I said, I don't know what it is. Can you explain this? Can you explain the math? Then nothing seems to have changed. No really dramatic change has happened in the proportion of the Haredi population since 1956 or since 1948 for that matter. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, there were massive
waves I have a lot of respect for the Haredim, by the way. I don't have so much respect for the Achechem Yavo Lamelchama V'atem Teshvu Po. I don't have so much respect for that. But in general, the Haredim are like you say, values. Okay, they have they form the nucleus of Judaism. Okay, the nucleus of Judaism. Okay, I have a lot of respect for them.
I wanted to ask you. I once heard one of your colleagues at Hebrew University. I won't say his name, but he focuses on game theory as well. I'm sure you know him. I once heard him speak about his involvement with Israeli politics. He has been an advisor for a few decades to the Israeli Air Force. He was an advisor to Rabin during the peace process. And he presented a very interesting picture that, on one hand, policy is implemented by civil servants, but it's written based on academically fashionable ideas today, sometimes to some degree. And on the other hand, he had a feeling that he was sort of powerless, like he was this talking head nerd that would be used to justify whatever it is they wanted to do anyway. But in practice, when he'd start opening his mouth and going on about theoretical matters, he would be ignored because politicians had their own immediate incentives, to become a member of the Knesset, to become a minister, to become minister of something important, to become the prime minister, to get a Nobel Peace Prize, and so on, so on, and so forth. Is this a basically accurate model, though, of the way that academia informs policy in today's world and in Israel specifically?
I do think that academia has some influence on policy. It does. You know what? Let me tell you a story. There was. Have you heard of Peace Now? The organization called Peace Now. Okay. We don't hear about it that much anymore, but it used to be an influential movement in the 80s, late 70s, the 80s, something like that. Okay. Now, in the 30s, there was another movement, not so different from Peace Now, which was called Covenant for Peace, Brit Shalom. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Brit Shalom was
Canaanites, yes.
Magnus, the president of the Hebrew University at the time, was one of the leading figures there, and there were other important people, and they were against the formation of the Jewish state. Okay, this was at the time of the mandate. Right? They were against the Jewish state. Okay, they wanted a binational state. Okay, that's what they were for. They wanted a binational uh, um, Arab Jewish state. Okay. Now, Ben Gurion was told about these people, and he said, "Okay, they are talking and talking. Okay, I'm going to act. Okay, and I'm going to make a Jewish state and let them talk. Okay, let them talk. They don't bother me." So he made a big mistake, I think. Where he did manage to form a Jewish state. He made the Israel of today, uh, and but he made a big mistake in ignoring Brit Shalom. Why did he make a big mistake? Because, as I said, Brit Shalom was the baby of Magnus, the president of the Hebrew University, and other academic people supported it highly, strongly. Now you could say, well, their vision did not work. They were against the Jewish state, for a binational state. We didn't get a binational state. We got a Jewish state. Now, so they failed, but they didn't fail. Okay, because they are the academic people. They are the academia, and the academia does affect a lot of things, a lot. And let me tell you just what it affects, okay? But first of all, the media, okay? The people who are running the media, we have an Arutz say, okay? We have the Channel 14. Here and there, we have this and that, but most of the media is left wing. Okay, it's left wing, and and so and anti-government. Okay, most of the media. So we have the media are the products of the universities, and the universities are left wing just because as it was at the time of Magnus. Okay, so they have a tradition of creating that atmosphere. Now, but it's not only the media; it's almost the whole government. You know, except when you talked about being prime minister, you talked about being a member of the Knesset, about being a minister. Okay, but you know those people they make policy, but the people who carry out the policy are not ministers. Okay, the people who carry out the policy on the ground are the second tier officials. Okay, and those second tier officials are not elected; they are appointed. Okay, and who appoints them? And what criteria are used for their appointment? Not to talk about the judicial arm, which is a travesty. It's a tragedy and a travesty. Okay? They are also not elected. They are appointed. And where do they get educated? They get educated in the universities. So the people who really run the country, yes, who really run the country, yes, they are descendants of Brit Shalom, and they are peace now people, and we have a problem.
So academia drives policy. What changes the intellectual fashion of academia? And I mean that in two senses. First of all, in the hard sciences, which you can maybe say, okay, it's the accumulation of knowledge and discoveries and so on, and it linearly drives it. But also in the soft sciences, where this doesn't seem to be exactly the case. So what drives changes in intellectual fashion?
Well, I mean, the hard sciences have nothing to do with politics. I think.
But with game theory, maybe.
I don't see any connection. What?
With game
What's
theory,
that?
maybe.
Game theory is not part of the hard sciences. Okay, game theory arose from economics and um, from mathematics. It's true, but it's not applied game theory. Yes, which is. Uh, that's not. I wouldn't buy that it's part of the hard sciences. Maybe to some extent, mathematical game theory. Okay. Why do the why do we have a tendency to left wing in academia? You know, that's a fact. It's all over the world. But you know what? I think I think I have the answer. I was going to tell you I don't know, but I just hit on the answer. Uh, you know, Clemenceau was the premier of France in the First World War. Okay, and what he said when socialism was just becoming active, okay, popular, important. Now, what he said in the 20s, sometimes in the 20s, he said, if you're not a socialist before the age of 20, then you are wicked. And you're a bad man. And if you remain a socialist after the age of 20, okay, then you are a fool. so there's something in socialism which is sort of it's an ideal which sounds great, okay, but it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. Let me talk about socialism for a moment. Okay, socialism is based on the motto for everyone according to his needs. To everyone according to his needs, from everyone according to his ability. That's the basic motto of socialism. From everyone according to his ability, to everyone according to his needs. Okay. Now, I think that is a wonderful motto, and I subscribe to it with both hands. I like it very much. I think everybody should give according to his ability and should get according to what he needs. If you don't need more, you shouldn't get. I subscribe to that. Okay, that's fine. That's your higher value. Socialism is the higher value. Okay, there's only one small mistake. One small screw up in this, and that is it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Otherwise, it's fine. All right, but it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is we're coming back to a word that we have used quite often in this podcast, and that is incentives. Okay. Now, if you are going to get like everybody else, according to your need, you don't have an incentive to give according to your ability. It's as simple as that. All right. So if you're going to give according to your ability, then you have to have incentive. It's not higher. It's not higher. It's lower. Okay, it's lower. All right, and that is now. Now I think that academia, the ivory tower of academia, is built on the kind of thinking of pre-20. Okay, Clement. So it's not realistic. It's not the way the world is. But that's why we're in academia. It's an ivory tower. That's not the way the world works. Okay, the world works by incentives, and that I think may, I don't know whether whether the word explain is right, but that's what's going on in academia. That's why academia is people who don't really get their hands dirty. They don't really get their hands dirty.
So you're saying that because they're basically divorced from reality, this my question was not why they're leftist. My question is what drives changes in their ideology beyond just being leftist. Because if you were to ask a leftist of 70 years ago what he thought about the ideas of leftists today, he would find them insane.
You find them what?
He would find them insane. If you asked Stalin what he thought of pride parades, he would probably have you shot right there. So there are changes in fashion. It's true they're all to the left, but there are changes in fashion. And I wanted to ask what drives those changes. Is it a random walk? Are there underlying processes?
I think I've said what I have to say about that issue. Okay.
I understand.
I don't have anything more to say on that. What drives changes in fashion?
You said something in 2006 that I read, that you said that in one respect, Satmar was right about Israel, that Hashem, God, did not build a home in Israel, and therefore the work of the Zionists is for nothing, and that we were in deep trouble. And that was 18 years ago. And you said that the solution would be for the Bnei Akiva, the religious Zionists, to take control of the place and implement a more game theoretical policy. And that was 18 years ago. Looking back on that from today, what do you think? Was that basically accurate? Is the situation better or worse than you thought it would be in 18 years?
Hey, let me take a slurp of coffee. Yeah, I said this 18 years ago, and I still hold by it. I'm going to say it. Im Adonai lo yivnei bayit shav amru bonav bo. It's a whole pasuk. So I said the Shem Hashem Shem Adnot. I said it in full language. It's a whole pasuk. So it's okay. I really think that at the basis of Israel, of the land of Israel, is the Jewish people. And at the basis of the Jewish people is Torah. Okay. And without Torah, it's going to fall apart. Okay. That's Hashem lo yivnei bayit. Okay. Without Torah, it's going to fall apart. You have to have, now here's where your higher thing, your higher values come in. That's where your higher values come in. Okay? Now I'm on your side. Okay, your higher values, it's got to be Torah. Otherwise, there's no excuse for the state of Israel. It's got to be Torah. It otherwise you have otherwise the Palestinians are really Arabs. Okay, with Torah, the Palestinians are also Jews, but because Palestine is Eretz Yisrael. But without Torah, the Palestinians are the Arabs only, and the Jews are colonialists who came from Europe, and it's I said it very strongly in '06. Uh, uh, I think I still go along with it. What I said, I think it is doomed to failure. Those are maybe too strong words, but basically I go along. Okay. We do not. We need an incentive to stay here. Incentives again. Okay, incentives again. We need an incentive to stay here. Only this time, the incentive is your higher values. Okay, and those are your higher values, and we need those higher values. Otherwise, people don't know what they're doing here. Why are they here? Yes. You know what? Let me tell you a story. No, I don't. Okay, I'll tell you a story without names. I wonder whether I should tell this story.
Well, you can anonymize it.
No, I'd rather not. I'd rather not.
Okay.
I think it's something which is very recent, very hot, and I think even if I don't call people by their names, people will recognize what I'm talking about. And I don't want to get into that. But I think let me put it less specifically. Um, Sooner or later, people will realize that there's no point in being here and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. We've been fighting for more than 100 years. More than 100 years. The first violence was in 1921. Okay, the first large-scale violence was in 1921. So it's 103 years now. And there's no point in sitting here and fighting if you can do just as well in Kutzlau. Uh,
So, may I ask a question? In that case, um, the Arabs say that they are also driven by higher values, and that they are not driven by base incentives such as economical values and so forth. They, for instance, named their attack on Israel, the operation on the 7th of October, the Al-Quds flood, right? So they're appealing to the Holy Flood, right? They're appealing to the Har HaBayit, and they say that they're driven by higher moral values, religious values, in the same sense that we should be if we're going to stay here in the long term. Does game theory even apply in this sort of scenario where people are not driven by very base quantifiable incentives? They're driven by something above and beyond that.
yeah, I think game theory is just what people. Game theory is driven by what people want. Okay, so if they want Har HaBayit, they have Har HaBayit actually. If they want Har HaBayit, they have it. Yeah, nobody is challenging them. I think they're using Har HaBayit as an excuse to attack us, but they have it. Yes.
Well,
I don't understand what. Nobody's attacking them because
they have it, but the Israeli police are the ones who decide who goes up.
They have it. It's fine. All right.
But they don't have
I don't know
rule of the land.
what I think they want to exclude Jews from Har HaBayit. I don't think it's a. I don't think we should agree to that. But um, uh, I don't know. I think they are appealing to higher values, and I think. By the way, I'm not. I'm known maybe as right wing, but I'm not. I'm not for Eretz Yisrael Shlema, and I'm not for extending Israel to include all of Judea and Samaria and Gaza. I don't think it's a good idea. It's the Arabs are there. We're not going to. We're not going to expel them. Uh, they're there, and we can't rule over several million people without its stake. It doesn't make any sense. Some of the people who are in favor of Eretz Yisrael Shlema, um, they say, well, the Arabs will not be allowed to vote, but that won't. It won't work. It won't work. I'm in favor of some kind of accommodation, but I mean they have to cool down, and I think education is the way to somehow education. Somehow we have to educate them, or they have to educate themselves. We have to get them to educate. I don't know. I don't. I'm not very optimistic about the outcome of this. Um, about the outcome of this war, 100-year war, 100 years, be another 100 years.
What do you think the future holds? Professor Aumann?
You know something? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Yeah, like I said, I'm not very optimistic. Okay. Uh, I'm not very optimistic. But yesterday I wasn't sure. I listened to האחיכם יבואו למלחמה ואתם תשבו פה. Okay, I listened to it. And then at the end, it's Shabbos Mavorchim, right? Yesterday. And we have a Kiddush, shul every Shabbos Mavorchim. So there was a Kiddush. And at the Kiddush, a lady comes over to me, a member of the congregation, and she says to me, 2 weeks ago, a couple came from the United States and joined our congregation. They made Aliyah, and they joined our congregation, our shul. I said, that's wonderful. And she said, more and more people are coming from the United States or from abroad in general and making Aliyah just at this time during the Simchat Torah war. Okay? And they're coming and they're making Aliyah. So I said, fine, that's beautiful. Okay? And then I took Puss of Kugel and that's it. And she went away and that was it. And then I'm about to go home after the Kiddush. And she comes to me again and she says, Professor Aumann, we are living at a very interesting time. And the way she said interesting, she said it in a positive way. Okay. She said it in a way which is, we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He has made our lives at this time. At this time. So I am intellectually pessimistic, but spiritually optimistic. Okay, this lady made my day. She made Shabbos for me. She said, "We are living at a very interesting time," and she said that in a positive way. Okay, now we're not living in the Shoah. We're living at the opposite of the Shoah. So Am Yisrael Chai.
I think that being a Jew from the very beginning has demanded strength. I think being a Jew from the beginning has demanded strength, spiritual strength and faith above all else, far above intellect. And so for me also, optimism triumphs over experience and common sense.
Okay, that's it. That's the motto. Optimism triumphs over experience and common sense. That's it.
So
Okay.
God should be mesameach us in this month of Menachem Av, starting tonight. I wanted to thank you very much for a great conversation, and I'm sure the audience will agree. It's been an amazing interview. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And Chodesh
Okay,
Tov.
my pleasure.